back to the class, everyone. If you've seen any of my recent posts, videos, or streams, you'll know that I have highly favored the recent Lightspeed bundle for Grand Inquisitor. And in an effort to not leave everyone hanging, I want to talk about how they should be used, as far as mods, Zetas, and Omicrons go, and even some of the teams that they can beat. So just to be very clear, this is not going to be a tutorial on how to unlock Grand Inquisitor or how to unlock Reva. When it comes to their overall modding and Zeta strategy, I will be bringing this up from time to time, but I don't have any footage detailing those strategies, at least as of yet. This is more for general use, and again, for one more clarification, it is mostly for the 5 Inquisitors you get from the Lightspeed bundle, along with the Grand Inquisitor, and how to use that team. I'm assuming that most people that got the pack don't readily have Reva going. I realize that some people are in the minority whose guild essentially got it for them months ago, but for the most part, we're going to be talking about how to be using this Grand Inquisitor team with the 5 that you get. So no Marok, no Reva. First up, let's talk about Zetas. And the 2 Zetas that are going to be the most important are actually going to be 8th Brothers and 7th Sisters. Because without these Zetas, the GI event that is already pretty difficult becomes near impossible. One of the things that Inquisitors struggle with, and we'll go over this a little bit more with mods, is they really struggle with damage. The team naturally has a lot of survivability and a lot of control. So if you don't have 8th Brothers Zeta on the bladed hilt that, number one, does way more damage, and also inflicts armor shred, you're going to have a bad time and just not able to kill a lot of the enemies that are actually in the Grand Inquisitor event. So this is the number one most important Zeta, in my opinion, that again, if you don't have it, you're going to really struggle to even get through some of the bigger enemies like Kanan, Fulcrum, or Maul. Next up is going to be 7th Sister. I don't know if it's as essential as 8th Brothers, but it still does look really important. Where if we scroll down to the Zeta portion of this ability, it's going to have more recovery, it's going to have evasion up, and I think most importantly, it's going to be reducing her cooldown for this ability by 1. The reason why it's important is because this is really your only way of healing, and it also applies Foresight to the team. That Foresight becomes particularly helpful when you're going up against Fulcrum, and every single time she misses, she's getting that debuff stacking against her, so this speeds that process up, and it also, keeps you from dying because Foresight kind of stops all of her hits. So those 2 are the most important, because I don't really want to be recommending GI Zetas if you weren't even able to unlock them in the first place. I would recommend, if you can get through the event with just those 2, going right to Grand Inquisitor rather than going to, say, 5th Brother and 9th Sister, who are pretty good, but at the same time not as important Grand Inquisitors. Grand Inquisitor Zetas are going to actually work from the top all the way down to the bottom in order of priority. The reason why I'm suggesting the basic as the best Grand Inquisitor Zeta is because this is the one that is going to make the largest difference in the Reva mission. If you're not doing the Reva mission right out the gate, then maybe you can prioritize the lead over the basic, but again, if you are trying to go after the Reva from day 1, this is the most important because this is going to allow him to attack a 2nd and 3rd time depending on how many stacks of Purge the enemy has. This is important because the whole goal of the Reva mission is to be able to get tenacity up out as soon as possible, and if you are getting up to that 6 stacks even quicker by hitting the Jawa multiple times, you get to that end goal quicker. So most important, leadership really just adds a lot of stacking stats that are very helpful. Not necessarily necessary for the Reva mission, but if you're wanting to use Grand Inquisitor at all before you get Reva, that is pretty important. And then the unique is going to kind of follow suit in the same way, where you get these nice stacks and as well as a bonus turn in there, which again is overall important for his kit. But when we're talking about unlocking Reva and getting the ultimate version of the team, it's not as important as, say, the basic that we just looked at. Now, as far as helpful Zetas, both for the GI Reva event and then just general use, is going to be 5th Brother as well as 9th Sister. 5th Brothers, I believe it falls on Shroud and Darkness. It does some fun things, but ultimately this is not pivotal for his kit to work. He has a lot of control. He still has his Dispel. He still has Tenacity down. He still counterattacks. This just adds some fun possibilities with stuns and damage immunity that he doesn't necessarily need right out the gate. 9th Sister for Ground Pound, fun name. She gets to Daze, which is irresistible by Jedi enemies, which, again, can be helpful in some of the missions for the Grand Inquisitor event, but not really necessary to be able to complete it. So, overall, helpful, but not necessarily mandatory. And dead last is going to come second sister. And the reason why second sister comes dead last is, number one, her character is the first one that drops off once you unlock Grand Inquisitor. And the other thing that I really don't like about it is her unique is all based off of having to kill an enemy to be able to unlock these. And ideally, you're not killing or losing any enemies or allies in the Grand Inquisitor event, which is pretty much the only place that she's going to be used in. Because it says here that it goes to the end of the encounter. But if this is matching all the verbiage that every other kit out there mentions, that means that the Grand Inquisitor you defeat in Wave 1, that's the end of that encounter, and then you move on to the second encounter. So all that to say, pretty much this entire Zeta I don't even think is active until one of your allies dies, in which case, yeah, you don't want that typically. So at the end of the day, pretty much luxury, just some extra stats for ships if and when you get there. Now, next up, I guess we could go into mods, which seems to be the natural flow here. And again, this is for the overall Grand Inquisitor team, but I would stand by these for the GI event specifically. For the Riva event, the modding gets really weird and mostly protection heavy, but for the overall GI event, it really does still align with their kits. Now, when we talk about mods and the Inquisitorius, we need to focus on two different things. Number one, we have to put the characters into each of their roles. Number two, we also have to recognize that there is typically a turn order for them. And what I mean by turn order is you really want 7th Sister to be going first. So you do not have to have your 7th Sister at exactly 343 speed. That's not the point. The point is she needs to be faster than all the other characters on the team. For 5th Brother, he needs to not necessarily be 330 speed, but he needs to be slower than 7th Sister and faster than everyone else. The reason for this is 7th Sister going out in the very beginning and dazing a character that would otherwise gain turn meter, or just getting rid of a pre-taunt so that 5th Brother and Grand Inquisitor can target whoever they want, is of the utmost importance. If they somehow manage to cleanse the initial purge that they start out with, then 5th Brother can go and apply more purge. That will allow Grand Inquisitor's AoE ability to actually ability block them because it's irresistible. And then once everyone is fully under control, 8th Brother can come and do all his damage, and 9th Sister, her speed doesn't really matter. So overall, that is the turn order you want. Now, as far as exact mods, let's look at them each individually. So first up is going to be Grand Inquisitor and 8th Brother. And as I mentioned previously in the video, the big thing that the Inquisitors really struggle with pre-Riva is damage. They have control, they have tankiness, they do not have a lot of damage. And one of the ways to help even this out is by modding Grand Inquisitor for a lot of damage. A lot of people typically lean into him for speed to get him to cycle through turns, but I really like to have him hit as hard as possible. And then 8th Brother, there's really no controversy there. Everyone pretty much does the same thing as well. So I do like crit chance on him, purely because his crit chance is really low because it's not even a part of his mastery. So one crit chance set and then enough secondaries to get him up to 80% should be good enough. A crit damage triangle, and then an offense primary on the cross, as well as the arrow if you can. You'll see here that I am actually running a speed arrow with a really high offense or secondary, so that is also another option. I'm really only sacrificing about 1% offense by going with this method and getting a lot of speed that way. But overall, just wants a lot of offense, a decent amount of crit chance, and then again, enough speed for your roster so that it can fit into that very specific order that we talked about previously. Now, 8th Brother is going to be a little bit similar in the sense that he doesn't want as much speed because, again, he's going after the Grand Inquisitor, and in addition to that, he doesn't need as much crit chance because when you go in and you look at his mastery here, you'll notice that he naturally gets more crit chance than Grand Inquisitor does, so he's not going to need the hardcore secondaries that we need with Grand Inquisitor, and he'll quite frankly very easily hit 100% even if you don't have all of your mods 6E like I do. So overall, damage on the two of them is going to be the most important. Now, when we're looking at our support / healer characters, these ones really just care about having enough speed to go at the right time. For 7th Sister, I do like to add some potency in there, so I have a potency set with a potency cross on the primary, just enough to get her into the 67 range, which actually then gets boosted by the 20% that is in her own kit from her unique ability, which gets her high enough in there that she should be consistently landing a lot of her debuffs. And then again, she also wants to be the fastest on the team, so we don't have a whole lot of room for anything else. If you want to mod her for health or protection, that's probably ideal. I have a crit chance speed triangle on her. That's not good, but at the same time, she was a character that I looked at and I'm like, you got the speed that you wanted. I need to put this somewhere. I guess I'll put it on you. Next up is going to be Fifth Brother, who's probably the most forgiving out of the 5 characters in the sense that his second set really doesn't matter. The primaries don't really matter. He's naturally actually very tanky, so you don't really need to worry about a lot of extra survivability on him. I have tenacity on him because, again, it just doesn't matter. The biggest thing is getting him enough speed so that he falls in the turn order where we want him. And overall, you don't need potency on him, or at least not nearly as much as Seventh Sister needs it, because when you look at his abilities, not only does he have tenacity down, but at the very end of both this basic as well as his special, these debuffs can't be resisted. These debuffs can't be resisted. The ones in his other unique can be, or his other special can be, but they're not nearly as important. So you can, again, you can kind of do without that. It's not going to be the biggest deal. And last but not least is going to be Ninth Sister, our tank. Pretty classic tank build. Defense or health sets ideally. I would suggest that you either lean heavily into protection or into health. There's merit to both. Her kit, I believe, favors health more in general. But at the same time, the team faces a lot of team with max health damage, like CLS or Rogue One with a lot of exposes. So you can technically make her tankier by going for more protection. Again, her speed isn't all that important unless you can go for the nice score like we did. Ultimately, she just probably wants to be slowest on the team as a whole. So again, protection, and not obviously not amazing speeds. I think I probably put this one on her because it had the defense percent secondary, but you're a very standard tank. So now that we covered Zetas as well as mods, let's move on to Omicrons, which is actually going to be, not that tab, it was actually going to be a little bit interesting because they're all TW, so we kind of have to look at them through the same lens. I will first up say, I really hope none of you have done this, do not apply these guys' leaderships. Not only are they so temporary, because the Grand Inquisitor event is not limited, so if you got the pack, you have it available, but they're also bad. I've seen them not be able to not do what they're supposed to be able to do. Like, if you look at Ninth Sisters, this is very clearly anti-Jedi Luke. I see this loose to Jedi Luke, or like the few videos that I've actually seen of people who've tried this, I see this loose to Jedi Luke all the time. Like, this is not good. Unless you're going for the full meme team, which if you are, power to you, never apply any of these guys as TW Omicrons on their leadership. Now, we do need to look at Grand Inquisitor, who actually has some of the best TW Omicrons, or TW Omicron, I should say. And you'll notice that I myself actually have it, which, if you followed the way that I apply my Omicrons, that should say a lot within itself, because I do not apply a lot of TW ones. But the Grand Inquisitors is not only good, but if we look at the bigger picture in Galaxy of Heroes, you'll notice that it's actually amazing. So basically, breaking down what it does is the first time all enemies reach 6 stacks of Purge, this ability's cooldown is reset, which that's kind of whatever. If the target enemy had 6 stacks of Purge and is not a Jedi, inflict buff immunity, whatever. If the target enemy has 6 stacks of Purge and is a Jedi, instantly defeat them. Jedi enemies defeated this way cannot be revived. So not only is this Omicron going to be good as long as Grand Inquisitor has a place in the meta, this Omicron is very likely going to be good as long as Jedi have a place in the meta, because it's an insta-kill on them and then they can't come back, which is pretty broken. Especially when you consider Reva is going to give everyone 6 stacks of Purge at the very beginning, so he can just annihilate, say, GK on a JMK team on the first turn, and before anyone moves at all, just completely gone, just completely dead. And again, Jedi keep popping up in a lot of other teams that aren't even necessarily fully Jedi. We just had the Queen Amidala team come out not too long ago, where the leader, Queen Amidala, is not even a Jedi, but you can use it against there and kill one of the Jedi off on our team. We have the Jedi Vanguard faction coming up. There's always going to be relevancy to that special Zeta, whether you're using Grand Inquisitor lead, Reva lead, Lord Vader lead, etc. His unique isn't terrible, but it is a little bit more niche overall as to what it can do. Whenever Jedi enemies with Purge gain protection up, they take damage equal to 25% of their max health. So again, pretty targeted towards enemies with protection up. Not bad, but again, more limited as to the teams it's going to apply to. There's a lot more Jedi than there is characters with protection up, and arguably the specials also doing more. And last and kind of least is going to be the lead. I have a few mixed feelings about putting this last. It's actually genuinely good because they get to ignore enemies with 6 stacks of Purge, or they can actually go after them and ignore taunt. My issue with this is, after you get Reva, even with the TW Omicron, Riva's lead is arguably better in almost all cases. So the leadership overall just does not age very well. So this is going to ultimately be the order you're going to want to follow. Again, probably just not ever really doing the lead. Now, as far as what you should be doing with the team prior to Riva, once you do have these 5 characters, or rather 6 characters that we've outlined, I would highly recommend using this team on offense. Defensively, it gets beat by some of the very accessible, very kind of lower-ish teams like CLS, as well as Phoenix, that a lot of people just have. And I guess if you're trying to burn off those specific teams, that's fine, but at the same time, they can get a little bit more use on offense. In GAC, they can beat Qui-Gon Jinn or Keller on back lead really easily, really regardless of the comp. They smack on Shock T and 501st. Not really against Gas. I tried it a lot way back in the day prior to Riva, and it can work. It's just really sketchy. They stack so much damage. You gain so many buffs. It's not ideal. And then Jedi Revan or Jedi Luke lead, those are fine. And they can, at least in GAC, TW is probably actually a lot easier if you have the right TW Omicrons. But in GAC, they really only beat bad JMLs, like non-Relic 9, non-comps or comps without Jedi Revan and Jedi Luke. So if you find a JML comp like this where they just have sides here and they're expecting Jedi Master Luke leadership to do all the damage, but at the same time Jedi Master Luke is only like Relic 7, Inquisitors probably work fine in taking them out again, even without Riva, even without TW Omicrons. So that is going to cover pretty much everything that we want to go over. I guess the final thing that I will say in regards to overall relic levels is when you're going for the GI event, I would highly, highly recommend relic 7 as fast as you can, 8th brother, 5th brother, and 7th sister. The reason being is you're going to want them at relic 7 anyways to go after Riva, and really any help you can get for that event specifically, you're really going to want it. So thank you guys again for watching. Hopefully this was helpful. And as always, stay awesome.